My name is Nick, and welcome to my channel, where I like to talk about scary stuff. Skinamarink is the lo-fi or low-quality movie that somehow got the TikTok kids scared enough to put this on my radar. The loose story, if you can call it that, follows a pair of siblings who wake up to find all of the doors and windows missing from their home. They're trapped without parental supervision as something appears to be lurking in the darkness. Can you tell I didn't like this movie? Skinamarink was one of the most grating film-going experiences I have ever had, and I want to break down why. But let me be a little positive at first and talk about what does work in this movie. The goal here is to simulate a child's nightmare, capturing what it feels like to be stuck in a world where your parents aren't there to protect you. And at 5 or 6, that's a pretty terrifying notion. I think we all had those nightmares as kids. And the idea of being trapped in your own home, no doors, no windows, just some Legos and shitty public domain cartoons, that's also pretty terrifying. Taking what should be a sanctuary for these kids and turning it into a playground of horrors, well, that's what the genre is all about to me. The look of the film is certainly stylish. It isn't found footage, but goes for being just as frustrating to look at. Almost every angle of this film is designed to be looking away from the central subject of the moment. If a kid is talking, we see a staticky TV while hearing that kid talk just off screen. Director Kyle Edward Ball is definitely doing his own thing here, and he creates something that is truly singular. I give him credit for not only putting his vision to screen, but for also doing it at a fraction of the budget of even modest indie films. To be honest, I hated watching this movie, but I don't hate it. I can definitely appreciate what it's going for and why it would work for some, but it truly did absolutely nothing for me. The idea of turning a child's nightmare into a film may work as a short, but just looking at this plainly, I think it's clear this doesn't work as a film. This movie is barely a concept, providing not nearly enough story to sustain its 100-minute runtime. The two kids we focus on are hardly on screen and can barely be considered characters. I mean, I'm not looking for deep development for children, but there should have been something for us to attach to in order to care about them. We should have been following these kids and understanding how their feelings shift and evolve as they spend more time trapped in this house and as this entity grows closer and closer. Sure, putting children in danger is disturbing and scary, but it's not enough to carry an entire film. Even if this movie was loaded with great scares, it would still need some humanity to ground things. But this movie isn't loaded with great scares. Sorry, Skinamarink, now I'm coming for you. Let's get right to the big scene that everyone already knows about, the under the bed scene, because this is probably the closest the movie gets to being genuinely scary, and I can credit it for being technically well executed, but still not a whole lot there. So what happens is the entity is calling on the kids to come upstairs, and eventually the little girl decides to go upstairs to check on the parents, even though I thought that both of them disappeared, but okay, we're going with it. So she goes into the parents' bedroom, where the dad is sitting on the bed being all kinds of creepy, and he tells her to look under the bed. So she does, and the camera goes down below the bed and stares into darkness for like ever, then pops back up, and the dad is gone from the bed, and the mom is sitting on the other side of the bed. Spooky! Everything with the parents honestly annoyed me and aggravated me because I just found it to be annoying and confusing. Like at one point earlier on, one of the kids says, I think dad's gone, I think he's with mom now. So they both didn't vanish at the same time. Clearly mom vanished and then dad vanished. And if we're looking into this, it sounds like maybe this is a take on a divorce that is happening within this family. The mom left the family, now the children are dealing with some trauma as the father is unable to properly take care of them. And then there's of course this whole thing with the child falling down the stairs, and then this incident with a knife, and we can sort of read into it and believe that maybe this kid is going through a whole lot, decided to do something stupid, got into an accident, and is now dying. And this movie is the fever dream of a dying child. That's about as much substance as I can wring out of this one. Let's get back to the scares, because most of them focus on the camera just staring directly into blankness, leaving the audience to fill in the gaps. And I can see that being a smart move. I understand the idea of pushing the audience to fill in those spaces and create the scares for themselves. But this movie really gives you almost nothing. It makes the audience do all of the work, and you have to give us at least something to latch onto. Let's use Jaws as an example. The shark isn't seen on screen for much of the first half of the film. This forces the audience member to fill in the bloody gaps in your mind when someone gets pulled under the water. That works because you know there's a shark under the surface. You at least have an idea of what's happening. There's really no monster that you can put on screen that's going to be scarier than something that we imagine, but still, you have have to give me pieces to then allow my imagination to fill in the blanks. Here, it's just all blanks. Skinamarink just points the camera directly into darkness and says, I don't know, figure it out for yourself. I mean, we can all ascertain there's some sort of boogeyman, demon, entity, monster thing out there, but what is it really doing and why should I care? I don't think Skinamarink is at all concerned with what is within the darkness because I think it is all surface level. And to be fair, I think that's all it's trying to be. In theory, I could see this as interesting and even smart. Clearly this worked out for a whole lot of people. I, however, am not one of them. But I think my biggest problem is that there's nothing for me to be invested in. I think I could use my imagination to create those scares and fill in those gaps if I actually cared about other things happening on screen, but I'm invested in nothing because this is ultimately just style over substance. I should also state that I made the mistake of seeing this in a movie theater. I heard that this was the scariest new thing, and so I wanted to have the best experience and give myself the opportunity to be as scared as possible, and I thought by going in blind without seeing a trailer and just seeing it in a nice dark movie theater all by myself would be the perfect experience. It was not. This is an example where I definitely should have watched the trailer to get the flavor of what this movie was before going in, because 10 minutes in, I was done. I mean, there were a couple of things that kept me on board and made me want to see what was going on, but it was so boring. It was such a difficult watch, and honestly, I fell asleep at one point. And I didn't miss anything. Didn't miss a single story beat, because there aren't any. For any film, I should be able to walk away saying anything other than that was a great nap. The idea of making a movie out of a nightmare sure is great on paper, but you can't operate on vibes alone. For the concept, I'm gonna give Skinamarink a 2 out of 5. While I like the flavor of horror on display with the entity, there's really no story here, nor is there much material to read into. For the execution, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I may not have found this movie to be effective, but I can at least respect the way director Kyle Edward Ball accomplished his vision, especially on such a minuscule budget. And for the entertainment value, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5. This movie is not trying to be entertaining, I'll give it that, but it failed to lull me under its spell. It did help me get a great nap though. For my personal grade, I'm gonna give Skinamarink a 2 out of 5. I really wish I found it as terrifying as some others do, but I ultimately found the style of this movie to be more annoying than engaging. What did you guys think of Skinamarink? This is a very love it or hate it movie, which is the most exciting type of movie to talk about. Even though I didn't like it myself, I can certainly understand why anyone would, and I would love to hear your experiences with this movie in the comments. I also want to touch on the conversation that has happened within the horror community surrounding this movie and The Outwaters, another experimental, odd horror film. It's basically Skinamarink versus The Outwaters and like where do you land, and I think both of them could use some improvement, but I do have a lot to say about The Outwaters, so I'm gonna have to get on that next because there's the... that movie is crazy. That movie is crazy. Did you see The Outwaters? Get to watching The Outwaters. That will be an interesting conversation. Thank you so much for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it as always. You can follow me on Instagram and Letterboxd for more of what I'm watching. That's it for this video, but I won't stop you from watching another.